everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today in front of us is the Ultimate Collector Series Yoda, set number 75255, 1,771 pieces, sells for $100 in the States, 90 pounds or 100 euro. This is actually the second iteration of the Ultimate Collector Series Yoda. I don't think it was a UCS set the first time around in 2002. I don't know if it had that official title, but it is interesting that this is the second time this set has been made, and I would say it is a massive, massive improvement across the board in every single way. Before I get into the details, I do want to say thank you to the LEGO group for sending this set over to us to do a review. The set came out, I think, midway through 2019 roughly, so we're doing it a little bit late, but Ultimate Collector Series at the end of the day are very timeless, hence the title, Ultimate Collector Series. They really do end up being wonderful display pieces in a much larger collection. So this is the set right here. It is actually very good part to price ratio. I have it kind of far away from me right now because the gray backdrop kind of withers away. This is a relatively tall model with that lightsaber all said and done, but let me actually get it a little bit closer so I can show you some of these finer details. Just looking at this guy as you slowly turn him around, you'll notice that he's got studs that face outward in all directions, which is a relatively common build style nowadays, and it keeps the studded look very, very consistent throughout all of the different angles that you can see this guy from, which I think is actually a pretty nice way to put a model together. He is made up of, as you can see, a ton of tan plates, mostly plates, not as many bricks. There's a few under there, here and there, within the build, but for the most part, the body is plate heavy and intensive. And this is actually a decently heavy model, but not crazy heavy. The internal structure is cleverly put together where it's basically a big Technic box, and then you build out much larger flat plates and just chunk on each quarter of the body, so you can slowly but surely slap on each side of the figure, and then of course build the head. When you saw me shake him around there, you can see, yes, he's actually a little bit poseable, which is nice. There's actually quite a bit of posability to this model. When I think initially when you stare at something like this, you're thinking, oh, it's a completely static, non-movable piece, but there's a few little things. Like the legs can move around, that's fine, he's got little toes. I think the posability for the toes, if anything, is just convenient for the fact that if you bump this into stuff, it's easy to put it back on if it breaks off, like you're sliding it around, the toes can snap off. The fingers, of course, are poseable. He holds onto his green lightsaber. His fingers are actually really large, as you can see, but the lightsaber is 100% built through. There's actually a bit of detailing onto the handle underneath here, which is nice. But at the end of the day, the posability for the fingers and the feet they're not really there for any type of display purposes. You're not really going to be changing the overall stance or energy of the model by being able to move the toes around or the fingers, because it doesn't make sense for his fingers to be in any other shape or place if he's not holding on to the lightsaber, right? So when it really comes up to the posability, it just comes to the head. That's where you can play around with the overall model a little bit. And here you can just turn the head just a little bit on either side. It's nothing particularly dramatic, but it is nice that you can do that, especially if you've got a certain place. He's kind of looking a little bit past the blade here, for example. That's a nice thing to be able to add. And then the interesting thing here, you may have noticed a kind of interesting style for the eyes. I think I can actually just zoom in a little bit for you guys so you can see what I'm talking about. You can move the eyes around, and for better or for worse, this is just the way it is for Yoda. So you can actually move the bottom plates. They're kind of clipped in an interesting little way. You can move the bottom of the lids one way or another, and then you can also move the top of the lids as well. So you can kind of make them, here, let me bring this down a little bit. When you're looking at him eye level, you can see that he actually looks pretty angry, which is kind of interesting. And at the end of the day, this is Yoda with his lightsaber out, so I think a slightly more aggressive look is somewhat appropriate for this particular scene, though you don't really see Yoda in the movies as a guy who I don't know, does he ever get angry? Even when he's fighting, he doesn't ever really seem angry, does he? And there's Sad Yoda. I don't think I'm ever going to leave him in sad mode. I don't know, it just doesn't... Anger seems more appropriate for Yoda than being, you know, on the brink of tears. Like, for some reason, he just doesn't seem like that kind of guy. But at the end of the day, this is really what Yoda is to me, and I think a lot of people. He's just kind of the more calm, patient, and sort of at the ready kind of guy. Did I get those right? These are pretty sensitive. They'll stay when you move them, but you really do have to get them just kind of in the right spot, because at any tiny little degree, and it does kind of look like he's got a slightly different expression. But I think that is probably the best way, at least the way that I'm going to prefer to display him. But it is interesting. You do get to play around with the actual expression of his eyes. Nothing else moves. You can move his head side to side, which is great, because now he's got some attitude. But other than that, yeah. There is some posability added to this display piece, which I do appreciate. And then from afar, here he is kind of from all around. I was sort of zoomed up a little bit here. The hood is really nice. There's actually a bit of dimension, and there's a bit of a gaping area there for the hood, which is fun. Maybe you could hide some little froggy snacks or something in there. And this is actually a pretty nice piece. It's a super, super long Technic cross piece, I think in white. So it doesn't contrast so much with the lightsaber. In fact, the center of lightsaber blades are a little bit thicker and whiter, so it is kind of a nice piece to use there. And it's, you know, slightly flexible. Not really supposed to be necessarily, but not bad. So that's the basic breakdown for this guy. I'm going to talk about him a little bit more, but let's actually get into the fig. All right, this is the Yoda minifigure, not an exclusive fig. This version of him has appeared in other sets before. The print for his torso, the mold for his head, and the printing on the back and everything. This guy has been around before. Some UCS sets, I would say more UCS sets than less, usually come with exclusive figs, but it's not a guarantee, and this is one of the cases where they just kind of gave you just an extra Yoda fig to go along with the set. All said and done, he's a fine fig. Let me show you guys the entire set together one more time. And in between me moving the figure and the larger display to the back of the Lightroom, I went online and checked out the weight of this set and the weight of the original 2002 set, and I found out that they're almost exactly the same. This is 2,058 grams. The original was 2,065, slightly heavier, but pretty much the exact same. And I think that's pretty interesting because this set with the much larger and taller and thicker version of the build, he's actually not any heavier, and that's because LEGO had the foresight to create a completely hollow Technic frame. It allowed them to use a lot more smaller and denser plate pieces for a higher level of detail. It looks a lot more fluid from a distance, so that's great, and it also managed to keep the cost down too. This is $100. The one from over 15 years ago was $100, so in relative terms, it's like they kind of cheapened it almost in terms of the way there is inflation, you know, over the years, so that's kind of great. I think they definitely knocked it out of the park in terms of price point. It would have been nice to get an exclusively printed Yoda fig. I don't know what that detailing would have been for his body. You guys can let me know what type of print you would have liked to see Yoda have if they had made him an exclusive fig for this set. But personally, I can't really think of anything. I don't know. I don't know if he looked much different on Endor or during maybe the original prequel movies. He does have his lightsaber out, so this is kind of a prequel version of Yoda than the original trilogy, but he pretty much looks exactly the same, I suppose, for either one. So you can sort of argue about that, I guess, in the comments below. I do appreciate that you can move his eyes around. It is a little bit weird. It's just kind of funny. Like his eyes pop in a way that I don't know. I don't know if I like it or if I don't like it yet. I know it's kind of creeped a few people out. I do appreciate the option though. The fact that you can move the head around, the eyes around, movable fingers and toes is fine, I suppose, but I don't care if those had been completely static builds. That would have been totally fine with me. That part of the model doesn't really change whether or not you can move it. So Ultimately, though, I would say obviously great improvement on the 2002 version. That goes without saying, I suppose. And I think they made some really nice design choices to keep the price down, increase the detail, and ultimately just make a better set. So good job, guys. I'm definitely going to be displaying this next to the R2-D2 BB-8 and probably the Porg also, so that'll be fun. And all we need to do next is make a C-3PO to scale with everything else. All right, thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault. Hey, if you like seeing our LEGO creations and or collections online, they're even more impressive in person. Our LEGO studio in San Diego is now open on the weekends. Click the link in the description below for more information or if you want to schedule a tour.